After the obstetrician took Natalia's newborn away, he was shocked and gasped when he heard the baby utter a single word. That shock, however, prompted him to do something that ultimately saved the child's life. What did the baby say, or so the doctor thought? Find out in today's story, and let us also know where you're listening from today. Natalia and her husband Alex were overjoyed when, after many weeks of waiting, she finally went into labor. The delivery was long and painful, but when they were able to hold their little boy, they felt like the happiest people on the planet. Then the doctor took their baby to the adjacent room for examination. He was a highly qualified specialist who had performed this procedure thousands of times before, and the parents felt there was nothing to worry about. Nevertheless, Alex insisted on following him. He expected that Dr. Ivanov would object, but Kusher merely nodded before ignoring him and focusing all his attention on the infant. After picking up the baby and bringing his face close to him, he suddenly gasped. The nurses turned to him, shocked and confused, and asked what had happened, but the doctor completely ignored them. He frowned and looked at the baby more closely, as if listening to something that only he could hear. Then he looked at the infant again, almost as if urging him toward something. There are a series of tests that obstetricians like Dr. Ivanov perform at every birth to assess how well the baby will function independently, outside the womb. In cases of complications, the baby might be transferred to an incubator or a specialized neonatal unit. Before Natalia's child was born at term, his chances of being in good condition were above average. But as Dr. Ivanov examined this infant, he unexpectedly demanded additional tests. Alex immediately lunged at him, demanding an explanation. Dr. Ivanov ignored him. Alex saw him taking a blood sample from the baby. Of course, this could not have been part of the standard procedure. The doctor frowned even more deeply as he inserted the blood sample into a device and studied the results. Then he looked at the baby again. The doctor seemed visibly shaken. "I heard him mumbling something. I'm sure I heard him say it," he muttered. He appeared almost delirious, and an anxious nurse asked him what was wrong. Alex felt the blood freeze in his veins when the doctor continued, "I heard this baby say something to me. It's impossible. It must have been my imagination, but it sounded like help." Alex steadied himself by grabbing onto the nearest cabinet. What did he mean? Was his baby ill? After all they had been through, he wouldn't have survived if something had happened to their child. Alex did not know what to do. He desperately wanted to know the results of the tests, which, according to the nurses, could take several hours. Natalia, no doubt, was worried and very eager to hold her baby again. How could he explain this heartbreaking situation to her? One of the nurses assured him that they would do everything in their power to ensure that the baby received everything he needed. When Alex returned to Natalia, he found her sitting on the bed fully awake yet puzzled about why the doctors were taking so long to return with the baby. Alex recounted everything he had seen and heard, but unfortunately, it did little to reassure her. While they waited in the room, the minutes dragged on. Finally, someone appeared, and to their surprise, it was Dr. Ivanov himself. However, the doctor looked very different from his previous appearances, when he had seemed confident and perhaps a bit arrogant in his competence. It all began one morning when Natalia woke up with unbearable abdominal pain. She was convinced that something was wrong with her pregnancy. Alex felt that familiar sense of helplessness and prepared to take his wife to the obstetrician. When they arrived at the consultation offices on the second floor, Natalia discovered that the waiting room was filled with patients. So she approached the receptionist. "How are you, Natalia?" the woman asked. "You must be eagerly awaiting the arrival of your baby. You're due to give birth next month, if I'm not mistaken." "That's right," Natalia replied. "But I think something is wrong. I feel awful, and I have cramps in my stomach that just won't go away. I'd be very grateful if you could see me." "Let's take a look," said the receptionist. "This will be difficult. This morning we've had 2 unplanned deliveries, and all our consultations are delayed." Natalia shrugged and agreed to wait. The receptionist's words still echoed in her mind, and she wondered if her baby might come out prematurely, which might explain her current condition. When Alex, having parked the car, appeared in the waiting room, Natalia still dreamed of the possibility of early motherhood. Alex was no happier than Natalia when he saw how busy Dr. Ivanov was, but given how anxious Natalia was about her sudden bout of pain, he agreed that they needed to wait for the consultation. They waited nearly 3 hours before finally getting an appointment with Dr. Ivanov, and Natalia immediately noticed that throughout the consultation, he seemed distracted. He placed his hand on her stomach and listened with his stethoscope for several moments before saying, "It seems everything is fine." Dr. Ivanov was so distracted that Natalia hesitated before asking, "Are you sure?" "Yes, of course." "Did you eat anything today?" Probably that's the reason. Some women become more susceptible to food poisoning during pregnancy. "I don't think I ate anything unusual," protested Natalia. Dr. Ivanov interrupted her. "Stress can also be a factor. After all these difficulties with your pregnancy, you're likely very anxious. Try to relax, my dear. Get some proper rest. Everything will be fine." It's true that she had spent 3 years trying to get pregnant, but in that time she hadn't gone mad. She wasn't making up her symptoms, so why had he examined her so quickly? Natalia noticed a half-empty cup of coffee on his desk. There was also a half-eaten sandwich on the table, partly covered by a napkin. She realized that he must have been having lunch. For a moment, she felt embarrassed for having disturbed him. On the other hand, she was worried about her baby, and what he had told her was so vague and nonspecific that she couldn't shake the feeling that he was trying to brush her off. Dr. Ivanov's offhand attitude and the way he dismissed her symptoms and fears made Natalia feel deeply uncomfortable. He was a very renowned obstetrician in their town. Several of Natalia's colleagues and friends had spoken highly of him, but her own consultation with him left her unsatisfied. It did nothing to help her, and she was reluctant to return to his office when her abdominal pains resumed. In the following days, she tried everything to cope with the pain. She ate only light, bland foods, drank herbal tea, and tried listening to music and meditating. Anything to stay as relaxed as possible. But nothing helped. The thought of returning to Dr. Ivanov's overcrowded waiting room brought her no comfort. Finally, when she could no longer bear the relentless pain, she called his clinic again. He prescribed a pain reliever that was safe for her in these circumstances, but offered no practical advice or encouragement beyond that. Once again, Dr. Ivanov reminded Natalia that the cause of her ongoing discomfort was most likely the stress she was experiencing. After hanging up, Natalia felt as though she were about to cry. Was she really harming herself simply by being too tense? Did he really think she was too sensitive to handle anything? That evening, she shared her concerns with Alex, who responded with far more sympathy, even though he wasn't a doctor. They discussed the possibility of seeking another obstetrician for a consultation, but in the end, Alex found a pain reliever, which helped her manage the abdominal pain a little better. Yet, just as things seemed to be improving, a new complication arose. Natalia's expected due date passed without any sign of labor, and, more importantly, the baby showed no signs of being ready to leave the womb. That stress and tension, which she had tried so hard to avoid, overwhelmed her once again. What if something was wrong? The next day passed without contractions. A week went by, then another. Desperate, the couple began looking for ways to induce labor. Natalia tried various activities, and sometimes Alex assisted her. Fortunately, their efforts paid off, and soon she felt the first contractions. With long-awaited labor finally underway and time running short, Alex and Natalia jumped into the car. Every red light they encountered seemed to linger forever before turning green. At the hospital, Natalia was admitted and immediately sent to the maternity ward. Alex followed closely behind. The nurses professionally prepared the expectant mother for delivery, but then a shadow fell over her bed, the presence of the obstetrician. It was Dr. Ivanov. By that time, Natalia was in such severe pain that she probably didn't even recognize him. Alex frowned upon realizing that this was the very doctor who had caused so much discomfort, pain, and insecurity over the past few weeks. Alex was very reluctant to trust this man with their baby's delivery. He spoke with the head nurse and calmly inquired about the possibility of having another doctor attend the delivery. The nurse listened sympathetically, but assured him that Dr. Ivanov was indeed the best obstetrician in the hospital department. At that moment, seeing how much Natalia was suffering, Alex decided to leave things as they were. He stayed by her side, supporting her in every possible way while keeping a close eye on the obstetrician. Fortunately, Dr. Ivanov maintained a professional demeanor and seemed to know what he was doing. He set up the equipment and checked everything while speaking to Natalia in a soothing tone. Along with the nurse, he conversed with her throughout the entire process. The pain was excruciating. The delivery demanded all of Natalia's endurance and determination. She vaguely heard Dr. Ivanov, the nurse, or Alex urging her to hang on. She was so exhausted, utterly drained, that it barely seemed enough. She had to keep going until finally the baby was born. Natalia felt a surge of warmth when she looked at his tiny face, her precious little baby. However, the new mother was allowed to hold the baby for only a few moments before he was taken away, and she didn't object. She needed to rest. Meanwhile, as she enjoyed a brief moment of calm, Alex watched anxiously as the baby was whisked away. He ran after the nurse, begging her to let him be present when the baby was examined for vital signs and reflexes. The nurse was kind enough but firmly explained that it was standard procedure. Alex pleaded, recounting everything that had happened over the past few months. To his great relief, she agreed. And so he witnessed the most shocking moments of his life. Dr. Ivanov appeared utterly convinced that the newborn was speaking to him. No, in fact, the baby was asking for help. And now, when Dr. Ivanov returned to their room, he looked uncertain and stammered when speaking to them. He apologized for the delay, as well as for the terrible mistake he had made earlier by not taking Natalia's complaint seriously. It turned out that their baby had contracted an infection in the womb. Had those tests not been conducted, the infection could have gone unnoticed, potentially leading to tragic consequences. Most likely, the pain Natalia had experienced for months earlier was also related to this infection. Fortunately, the illness was treatable. What Dr. Ivanov explained to Natalia and Alex was, to say the least, alarming. Neonatal infections can be extremely dangerous for the long-term health of a child, potentially causing developmental delays, dangerous changes in the placenta, which nourishes the baby in the womb, nutrient deficiencies, and impaired oxygen transfer. In many cases, such infections lead to miscarriages or congenital defects. While the baby is still in the womb, the balance between the mother's and the baby's immune systems is very delicate, and screening tests for such problems are not yet standard practice. Even treatment for these infections remains largely experimental. However, failing to detect these problems in the first few days after birth could have led to catastrophic, even fatal, consequences. In that strange moment when the baby seemed to speak to Dr. Ivanov, the obstetrician performed crucial screening tests that led to the discovery of the infection. He knew that the baby hadn't really been asking for help, but he was grateful that the baby's word had prompted him to run these tests. The baby was then transferred to a special neonatal unit for high-risk infants. He was prescribed a course of antibiotics suitable for newborns, and fortunately, he responded well to the treatment. A follow-up test confirmed that the infection had cleared. After 6 months, the baby was out of danger, and his proud parents, Alex and Natalia, were allowed to take him home. The parents were deeply grateful that their baby had not suffered any serious damage or defects. Dr. Ivanov offered numerous apologies for his dismissive behavior, which had nearly led to tragedy. The infant, named Nikolai, turned out to be a wonderful child who uttered his first word at the age of 11 months. Or was it his second word? Who knows? What do you think of this story? Please share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for listening to Storyline Narratives.